Today I ranked every Red Dead Redemption 2 ending from worst to best. 95% of my viewers are unsubscribed, so if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. In 5th place, last place, it's Low Honor, Go Back for the Money. This one just doesn't fit Arthur as a character or like the character art built over the whole game. And I think the fact that Micah, the antagonist of the game, kills you, the protagonist, literally shows like Rockstar saying, guys, you got the wrong ending here. You have to restart the whole game and get high honor because this is not the way the game's really supposed to end. Like any game where the antagonist kills the protagonist, especially in a game like this where it's not really supposed to go like that. Like, of course, in GTA, there's also a lot of endings that aren't as satisfying as like the third way. And I feel like that's the same thing here. It's like you can have these bad endings, but it's like the canon way are some of the high honor endings just because at least they fit Arthur as a character, and like that's what Rockstar wants you to do because it actually turns out a lot better in the end. I think it's the same thing here. Like, while this is what Low Honor Arthur would do, I think he'd go back for the money because he still wants to do something for John. Like, he's still a nice character in the end, but he's just not like as nice as High Honor Arthur is. But at the same time, I don't think him going back for the money really does anything at all. Like, it fits his Low Honor character more than like saving John at this point. But at the same time, I just don't think this really works in the whole canon of the story. I just don't think Low Honor Arthur works in the whole canon of the story. And the fact that they have basically Micah and Dutch say, yo, Arthur, like, you're going to have to die. And like Micah is the one that puts that final blow into Arthur. And Arthur doesn't really do anything back, which I think is a big difference between this and some of the High Honor endings where he actually fights back and does some damage to Micah. Shows that Rockstar's like, guys, you gotta spin the block again and pick the other ending. So I feel like just that in general shows that Rockstar doesn't even think this ending's all that great. And I think that's why I have to put it in C tier, because while it is a solid ending for like a lot of games, I feel like there is a lot of emotional impact here, like especially in the way Arthur dies, like at the end where it's just his body with the knife stuck in it. I don't think this ending's all that great compared to some of the other endings in the game, and I think it's just a pretty average ending in terms of like Red Dead Redemption endings, which are held to a lot higher standards. So I think, again, it has to go into C tier. In 4th place, I've got the Low Honor, Go Back to Help John ending. And I think this ending, again, is okay just because, again, the Go Back to Help John ending, technically I'd say is canon. Like, this part right here is pretty interesting where it's like, oh, he puts the hat on John. And it's like, that's a super emotional moment, especially if you haven't gone through it, you know, more than one time. But again, the like actual ending to this part, like after John leaves and then you get into the fight with Micah, that part absolutely sucks on this. I think that part might be worse than like any of the Low Honor go back for the money. Like, this one is actually like, okay, you know, you did help John, but still you're gonna get beat the fuck out of by Micah and then shot in the head by him, which I feel like is way worse. Like, it's just a way worse of an ending for Arthur. And I think while that part might be a lot worse, I think the fact that you do help John in this one does put it a little bit higher than the other one, but I'd say they're pretty much at the same thing where it's like you're both getting killed by Micah either way. And again, it's like this one, you got some parts that I would say are like not only canon but are also like, you know, kind of fit the story of like Arthur, where it's like, oh, you're going to help John. This part at the end just is like takes all the parts of the beginning and just spits on it, and it's like, oh, even though Arthur was a good person, we're going to let the main antagonist literally shoot this guy in the head, and Dutch does not care at all at this point. So, I don't know. I just think it's really funny, and overall, this ending is just so contradictory, where it's like, oh, we're going to give you a couple good things. At the same time, we're going to give you a really bad ending to this ending. So, I don't know. I think it's fine in general, but again, with like Red Dead Redemption standards being so high and comparing it to the other 3 endings in this game, I don't think this one even comes close to touching them. So again, it kind of has to go into C tier. It's a pretty solid average ending for most games. Like, I feel like I'd be okay with this happening in a lot of games, but it just doesn't really work in the whole Red Dead Redemption story. So that's why it also has to go into C tier. In 3rd place, I've got the High Honor, Go Back for the Money ending. Well, I think this one kind of works, and like Arthur might go back for the money. I think when he's High Honor, I don't think there's any way he'd go back for the money. He'd save John first and then try and go back for the money, or see, you know, however that goes down. And I think the fact like people kind of overrate this ending. They're like, oh, this one's better. I prefer this one over the other ones just because you do actually get to hurt Micah in this one. You get to put a knife into his eye. And I think while that is really fun, I think the more emotional endings, the ones that really fit Arthur's like canon of a story, same thing with like the third way in GTA 5, it's like those ones make a little bit more sense in terms of the story and just advancing it further. And I think, again, this one doesn't really fit Arthur's story. It doesn't fit his arc because, of course, he'd want to help John before, going back for the money. So I think that kind of takes away from this ending, but it still is really fun in that way. And I still feel like there is a more satisfying, like, actual ending here where it's like, oh, you get to hurt Micah. And, well, of course, you want to finish him off, and you do get to do that in another mission. I don't think this has the same like nice wrap up emotional ending. Like, especially here, you're just, seeing the sun coming through the trees instead of being on that mountain looking out at everything, and then Unshaken plays. Like, I feel like that hits so much harder than this does. And there's just not that super high emotional buildup for a game that is a lot of like emotions. And like the whole game isn't really a Western game. It's this emotional, jam-packed action, adventure, drama game. And I feel like this needs to have a big emotional ending, and this one really doesn't do it for me. And while it still is an amazing ending, I think it has to go in S tier just because it is still a great ending to the game because you get to hurt Micah. And if there wasn't the epilogue, I feel like this would probably be maybe better than the other ending. I think just because of the epilogue, it kind of takes away a lot of that because you don't actually get to, finish Micah off here and then someone else has to do it. So it still is a great ending, but I just don't think it's as good as the other ones, but it still goes into S tier no matter what. In second place, I've got American Venom. While American Venom is the true ending of the game, it doesn't really count the same as any of these other ones because there only is one ending in American Venom where Dutch shoots Micah and then John gets to shoot him after. And I think this one just really wraps up the story. Dutch kind of, apologizes for Arthur here, even though he doesn't say anything. Like, he apologizes for Arthur here and just apologizes for turning his back on John and Arthur just with the one shot here. And Micah finally does get finished off, even if it isn't directly by John. But, you finally get to wrap up the Micah story and the whole Vanderlyn gang story. I mean, while there are some stragglers in Red Dead Redemption 1, this is the kind of end of the downfall of the Vanderlyn gang. And yeah, well, again, there are stragglers in Red Dead Redemption 1. I think that kind of takes it into a whole new story where it's more about John and his family than like the actual other members of the Vanderlyn gang, like Bill, Javier, and Dutch. I think it's more about John and just learning about him there. Well, this is like the end of the Vanderlyn gang as a whole, where it's like Micah and Dutch might have teamed up again, bring back that Vanderlyn gang spirit. And they wanted John to go work with them, I guess. I don't know if they really would have worked with him, but still, they wanted John to come back, and he didn't want to come back because Dutch and Micah basically betrayed Arthur, and that's what he was always coming back. He was coming to get his lick back here. And I think people still do overrate this mission a little bit. While it does wrap up the story nicely, it kind of just shoehorns in a lot of plot points to like have a nice ending for the game. And while I still think it's a great mission, I think there's some of the greatest sound designs, and it just is a nice ending to the game. I just think they kind of just put too many things into the right story. Like, why would Dutch come to be with Micah here except to, I guess, kill him? I don't know. It could have worked in that scenario, but it just, there's like a lot of missing plot holes with this mission in general, which I don't know. It's still fine. I just think they kind of shoehorn things in to make it, of course, end nicely and have Red Dead Redemption 1 transition into Red Dead Redemption, or Red Dead Redemption 2 transition into Red Dead Redemption 1. Either way, though, I still love this mission. I still love getting the lick back on Micah, even if you aren't playing as Arthur here. But I just think this is such a great mission. And the fact that you get to kill Micah here is just, I don't know, one of my favorite parts of the entire game. So just for killing Micah, this has to go into S tier, but it can't go in first place because you don't really have that emotional ending. You don't get to wrap up anything with Dutch. I mean, of course you do in Red Dead Redemption 1, but there's not like a lot of emotions going on. It just kind of wraps up the story in this nice cute little bow where everything kind of works out fine until Red Dead Redemption 1 happens. So this one, again, has to go into S tier. Just such a great mission in general, but it can't go number one spot because it doesn't have that emotional impact. in first place, it has to be High Honor, Go Back to Save John, because there is just that perfect emotional, wraps up Arthur's story. He's this High Honor guy. He goes to save his boy John, and he still gets to beat the shit out of Micah in this one, even though he doesn't get that final lick back with the stabbing Micah in the eye. You still get, I don't know, a nice ending to the game. You see Dutch become a real villain here. I just think in general, this one really fits the story of Arthur, the story of Micah, and the story of Dutch a lot better. Like, you see Dutch is an asshole in this situation, and even while Arthur is this great person, he's helping everyone around him, Dutch doesn't like him because he's not doing things that Dutch wants. So, I don't know, I feel like I just love this thing, and the fact that you get Arthur dying on a mountain facing the sunrise just is great in its own way, and I feel like it just perfectly plays out in terms of like poetry. So I don't know, it just works so well. You get this emotional ending, and then Unshaken plays, and it's just amazing. So I feel like this has to be the best one just because there is so much emotional endings here, and I feel like the emotion of this ending turns it into something that's a lot better than any of the other ones. While the other ones are still all great in their own right, I feel like the fact that this is like the canon ending, same thing with like GTA the Third Way, that one sticks out a lot more than the other ones because it's the canon ending. And I think, again, this probably is Arthur's canon ending as Rockstar wanted you to play it. So this one makes the most sense in terms of Arthur's story, Arthur's arc, and just makes the most sense in terms of Red Dead Redemption 2 and how most people want to play it, where you want to play it as this High Honor guy who always, you know, at least most of the time wants to help people out and just be nice to people in general because they're going to be nice to him back. So I don't know, I think it just shows that this ending shows that Arthur is different from all the other gangsters, and clearly different from Micah and Dutch here because they clearly counteract him in this scene. And I think that's the thing. There's this guy with TB, and both of these guys can't figure out what they want to do with him, and they are attacking a guy with TB and turning on someone with TB who isn't even going to be there to stop them in literally a couple months because he's going to die from TB no matter what. I just think it's the perfect emotional ending to the game, and it really works the best with both Micah and Dutch's character arcs, and it just has a perfect, amazing, beautiful ending for Arthur here, where you eventually get to see him crawling to, you know, see the sunset or see the sunrise. So I don't know, it's just an amazing ending, and I feel like it's the perfect way for Arthur's story to end. That wraps up my Red Dead Redemption endings tier list. If you guys would change anything, put it in the comments. And if you guys do want to see more videos like this, there should be videos popping up right now, so go click on them and tell me what you think about them.